fantasy football trade deadline show. We also have waiver wire and fab for week 12. We'll get into that. We'll get into your questions. Fantasy Savvy on X. Follow me there. Like, subscribe to the show. We'll come back. We'll get into every team's NFL schedule. We'll look at some advantageous matchups, some not so great matchups here as we get into the stretch run. Just 3 weeks left until the fantasy playoffs as it hits in week 15. So we're already in week 12. The season has flown by as it usually does. We have a Thursday night game between the Texans and the Bills. But any questions you guys want to ask in the chat, we'll get to. We'll go over it all tonight. Make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, sharing. Appreciate everybody tonight. Here we go. Okay, we are back. Fantasy Savvy on X. Like, subscribe, share, all that. Appreciate everybody. We got our boy Jamie saying, "What's up? What's up, Jamie? Glad you could join us tonight. See how long you could last with us tonight. But let's get into it, man. We got some waiver wire stuff we'll talk about. We got some fantasy trade deadlines approaching. You know, some may already passed, but a lot of deadlines are still, a couple weeks away. So we'll look at the schedules deep. We'll go over some news today that is dropping as far as injuries, guys practicing, whatnot as well. But let's start with the schedule for the Arizona Cardinals. And let me just bring up the grid here. And the Cardinals, Jacoby Brissett has been playing really damn well. I mean, Jacoby Brissett, on the Patriots last year, starting those first couple games, now their offensive line, their personnel was terrible. And, on the Colts, a couple of those seasons, like he would look good for 3-4 games and then just look horrible. Just not do anything, especially for fantasy. Like the production he is giving you right now is pretty unbelievable. I mean, he's like a top fantasy quarterback this last month or so since he's taken over for Kyler Murray, and it just seems like they're going to roll with him the rest of the way. So you see here, they get Jacksonville this week. Now, Jacksonville just came off a really strong defensive performance against the Chargers. I mean, the Chargers go from the West Coast to the East Coast. Herbert, I don't know. I mean, his offensive line is severely banged up, missing multiple guys. And we did see the Commanders, over a month ago, I don't know, maybe week 6 it was, week 5. They looked really damn good on defense before they collapsed against the Chargers too. So we've seen this before. I mean, I like Jacksonville's defense. They've shown some signs. Again, the defensive coordinator is from Jersey, from Fairlawn, New Jersey. I used to live right next to that town. He went to Paramus Catholic. My best friend, one of my best friends, graduated with him at Paramus Catholic. So, shout out to him. Anthony Campanelli doing a good job with that Jacksonville defense in his first year. Liam Cohen doing a good job. Managing Trevor Lawrence as best he can. The GM doing a good job, bringing in, Tim Patrick and Jacoby Myers, with the injuries to Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. Tuen had a good game last week. But anyway, Arizona, Jacksonville, not a bad matchup. Then they get Tampa Bay. That should be a nice little shootout. The Rams is tough. Houston's tough. Those two games are definitely tough. And then Atlanta and Cincinnati is pretty good. So it's kind of like up and down for Arizona the rest of the way. I mean, Trey McBride has just been unbelievable since Brissett has come into town. And I know, Jamie, we were talking about McBride was allergic to the end zone. We all thought it. People were talking about how many touchdowns he scored in freaking college and high school, going back to Pee Wee football. It was like a big running joke, but he's been on fire. I think he's scored 5 games in a row now with Brissett. So it was a Kyler Murray thing. Kyler Murray was getting him the football, just not in the end zone. Obviously, it's going to be very hard to trade for McBride. Obviously, you're not selling Trey McBride. Michael Wilson goes off. I think I'd be selling Michael Wilson if I could. I mean, this was a career game. We're going to get Marv back at some point, after the appendicitis. So that will cause trouble. You don't. I always kind of like Michael Wilson, but I think you're selling him at this point. And Mari DiMercato has a high ankle sprain, so that's going to keep him out a couple weeks. I had DiMercato rostered in a bunch of leagues, and he was kind of taking over that backfield a little bit. And then last week it was, when he went out, Carter kind of jumped over Bam Knight. So now it's like Carter, Bam Knight. I mean, the whole thing's a mess in that backfield. Nobody's really going to stand out. And then you got Trey Benson, who we don't know when the hell he's coming back. So you just keep him stashed on the IR. Marv is kind of neutral for me. Like, I don't know if you really want to trade him, but I don't know if you want to sell him either. Brissett, I mean, in super flex leagues, you could probably deal him away. That Rams and Houston matchup, I don't know how much he's doing in those two games. He's probably going to give you limited points. Maybe against the Rams, actually. He already had a good game against Seattle. So he proved it against Seattle too. So it's like, I don't know, man, is Jacoby Brissett matchup proof? They just went down so far in that game in Seattle, so he kind of had to throw it a million times. So, I'm kind of neutral on the Cardinals. But obviously, if you can get your hands on Trey McBride somehow, some way, you're going to have to give a big, pretty penny. But the one guy I'm trying to sell here would be Michael Wilson, coming off that monster game. I think it was the highest receiving yard performance in the NFL this year. Maybe I'm wrong. Lily Patterson in the chat says, "What's up? Hi. Welcome to the show, Lily." All right. So that kind of wraps up the Cardinals. Now, guys, we're going to kind of go team by team here. We'll see how fast we can work through this. But Atlanta, next team. Now, Penix is out sounds like he's probably out for the year. We already saw Kirk Cousins a couple games. He's looked pretty bad. He can't move anymore. He just, even some of his passes just don't have quite the same zip. Now Drake London has the PCL injury. Darnell Mooney has just been really rough. I mean, he's going to be the guy here though. And we did see Cousins have some success with him down the stretch last year. But, it's hard to put your faith in Darnell Mooney. Now, do you panic about Bijan here? They get Carolina, good matchup, then New Orleans, then the Jets. So terrific schedule. So maybe Mooney's not terrible. And then you hope London comes back by week 12. And what are we doing with Kirk Cousins? It's like, it's only a super flex move. If he's out there, you could utilize him if your quarterbacks are in trouble, or, you add Cousins for some depth in case you get some injuries. And maybe he doesn't have a bad 3-game stretch here, but then he gets Seattle week 14. That's tough. But playoff schedule, Tampa, Arizona, and Rams is not terrible. So that doesn't look too bad. And you're not going to worry about Bijan. Pitts, it's just never going to work for this guy. I mean, people, we're kind of going back in again this year, and it's just not happening. So very, very underwhelming. Now, again, London's out. It's going to be more Pitts. But it might be just a shit ton of Bijan Robinson running and catching the football. And it might be a good thing for Algier too, especially in these next 3 matchups against against Carolina, New Orleans, and Jets, games that they should be able to hold game scripts, you would think, or be in close game scripts where Algier could still be in the mix and not get game scripted out. And he's getting goal line carries too, but Bijan actually got some more goal line carries, had 2 touchdowns last week. So, what are we doing with Drake London? Obviously you're holding Drake London. Do you want to sell Drake London at this point? Maybe you're scared of Kirk Cousins. I mean, you could, but I mean, even with Kirk Cousins, running possibly the rest of the season with Penix, who supposedly has some ACL damage. This was kind of the worry with Penix. He'd had all those knee injuries, and whenever he gets hurt, he just looks like a different quarterback. He's just very, very fragile. And we saw that in the college football playoffs. Again, When they played Texas, he tore him up. He looked unbelievable in that game. And then he played Michigan, and they got pressure on him. They were banging him up, and he looked like a completely different quarterback. And we've seen that in the NFL. He looks good one game. He looks terrible the next game. But obviously, he was good for Drake London. We don't know if Kirk Cousins is going to be able to accelerate Drake London to that level. I think it's definitely a downgrade. And with the injury, maybe it's not the worst thing in the world to sell Drake London if you can get a pretty good haul right here. Bijan, I think you're holding. You're not selling him. I think, he's still going to be able to produce regardless of the quarterback situation. And the schedule of the next 3 games is pretty juicy. And you do get Tampa in between that. But Seattle, Arizona, Rams is a little tricky. So Drake London, if you're getting a decent haul, I don't mind trading him away for something very, very good, obviously, because he's still a stud until further notice. All right, Baltimore. And we'll try to blow the schedule up a little bit for you guys so you can see it maybe a little bit better. All right, there we go. Baltimore gets the Jets this week and Tyrod Taylor. Another Jets regime that just another quarterback change. I mean, it's just a disaster. I remember a couple of years ago, the fans and the media were bitching so much that they said, we got to give Tim Boyle a shot. I mean, Tim Boyle probably better. And then they brought in Tim Boyle, and he's, arguably one of the worst quarterbacks you've ever seen play football. But, that's what Jets fans wanted. So now we're going to get Tyrod. They're going to bench Fields. But, we'll get into that when we talk about the Jets. I'm not going to go on the Fields rant just yet. But Baltimore, the Jets, Cincinnati, very nice. Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh's defense is playing better, but still not a bad matchup. They are playing better, though, but it's a home game. Then they get Cincinnati again. New England's not great. Green Bay is not terrible. Green Bay is not as scary as we thought they were going to be. So the Baltimore schedule is looking pretty good, and it's pretty nice for Derrick Henry. Jets, Cincinnati twice. Is pretty damn juicy. So 3 juicy games there, especially that middle. So you want to go with Henry here, going to trade for Derrick Henry? I think so. I think it's a good target. Mark Andrews is starting to come on, getting into the end zone. He's doing the same thing he did last year, coming on at the end of the stretch. So I'm still kind of neutral on him, but, he could have a strong finish to the year here. Bateman was out last week. It's kind of going to be Zay. They're using a lot of that 13 personnel, 12 personnel with Likely as well. He's playing about the same amount of snaps as Andrews, but, not like a guy going to go crazy to trade for here. Lamar owners may be down on Lamar. I mean, he really hasn't been playing that great. Just came off a rough game against Cleveland, and then he gets, he's got some good matchups too. So Lamar could be a little bit of a buy low right now. I don't mind chasing after Lamar and Derrick Henry here. Another guy I'd be picking up if you're a Henry owner is Keaton Mitchell. Justice Hill was a healthy scratch last week. Keaton Mitchell, they did play Ali last week too. Actually, Justice Hill wasn't a healthy scratch. He was hurt with something. But Keaton Mitchell would be the guy if Henry went down. So, just a guy to keep on your radar there. Buffalo, not a great matchup this week. And, you got all you could get from Allen last week. I mean, 45 to 51 fantasy points, depending on your league scoring. I mean, just an absolute insane game. And it just goes to show you, it's just tiring between the media and the NFL fantasy Twitter, from week to week. I mean, all the panic after the Miami game. And they look like one of the best teams against Kansas City. Their offense was rolling against Kansas City. It is true that I still think Brandon Beane was resting on his laurels, not adding a weapon, at least for Shihito. They could have got cheap. But when you have Josh Allen, it covers up a lot of things. And we saw that again, this week with Allen. And a lot of Allen detractors were trying to give up on him, bash him after that terrible play he made. And then he comes back and throws 6 touchdowns. There definitely still is a lot of people who have it out for Allen for whatever reason. They didn't believe in him. Um, you know, those racist tweets he had when he was like 16 years old. There's definitely there's definitely some things out there, that people just want Allen to fail for sure. For whatever reason. There's a lot of people out there. To me, he's the best quarterback in the league, but he doesn't have the championship rings yet, but I think he'll get one or two when it's all said and done. Is it going to happen this year? We'll see. Their defense, they look good one week, they look bad another week. Their run defense still has major issues. I know Bernard's banged up, Milano's banged up. They're kind of just working themselves out there. Taron Johnson's, I think, is a little bit banged up too. So maybe when these guys get healthier down the line, they play a little bit better defense, especially against the run. They definitely need to improve. That's a big, big weakness. But hey, it's good for Allen owners when they're getting into shootouts. So they get Houston this week. Not a great matchup, but you still expect them to get a lot of possessions. Maybe Allen doesn't have a ton of yards in this game, but he still could get 2-3 touchdowns here. And then they get Pittsburgh. Again, Pittsburgh's defense is playing better, but not bad. Cincinnati at home is very nice. At New England, the first round of the fantasy playoffs, a rematch game. That's going to be a big, big, big time game. Buffalo's going to need to win that game if they're going to try to win this division. And they get Cleveland. That's a tough matchup. Could be shitty weather. And then Philly in the Super Bowl. So the matchups for Allen, the playoff matchups are not good. New England, Cleveland, Philly. It's kind of tough. Are you selling Josh Allen? No. I mean, you're not selling Josh Allen. James Cook, are you selling? Probably not. Kincaid, what are you really going to get? It's just kind of just hold all the Bills. I mean, we could still get some high scoring games in a New England game. The Philly game could be a back and forth shootout, especially if Saquon is running all over their freaking defense. What are the Bills going to do at receiver, though? I mean, Keon Coleman was a healthy scratch, was late to the meeting, supposedly. And then Tyrell Shavers and Gabe Davis, who they just, who played with the team, for years. And then Tyrell Shavers, has kind of been elevated. He's been on the team for 3 years, been on the practice squad. He looked good. I mean, they look better cohesively with Allen than Keon Coleman has. I mean, Keon Coleman's had a couple of good games. So you wonder if Keon Coleman's going to got Wally pipped a little bit in this game by Shavers and Gabe Davis. Shavers is kind of interesting to me. I don't know. He might be a decent pickup, actually, the rest of the way. Shakir was the one guy, surprisingly, who didn't do anything in that game against Tampa, especially, when Allen's thrown for 300 yards, a 6 freaking touch or 3 passing touchdowns. Shavers had the 90 yards, caught that big bomb. I think he kind of adjusted his route, ran down the field. But we'll see. We'll see if the Bills can keep this passing game fluid. I think they let Allen kind of, air it out a little bit more. There was more like routes downfield, instead of all these shorter routes, quick hitters. They kind of opened it up for him. And I think that's what they got to do because he has the arm. He has the playmaking ability. They kind of needed to do this in this game, to be honest, because they were getting run all over. Sean Tucker was terrorizing them. So Bills are a hold here for the most part. Carolina, best game by far for Bryce Young last week. Same with Tedero McMillan. So maybe that's a sign of things to come. Atlanta looks like a defeated team, though. Panic's going out. London going out in this game. They lose twice to Carolina. The first time they got, shut out 30-0. And then, so I think they're kind of a defeated team. But they get San Francisco this week. That's actually a pretty good matchup. San Francisco's defense is banged up. Their secondary isn't playing that great. And San Francisco's offense is, in full motion. So that's a good matchup. But that could be a little bit of a shootout. Then they get the Rams, not the best matchup. Then they get the Week 14 bye. But then they come back New Orleans, Tampa, nice. And then Seattle, which is a tough Week 17 matchup. So Tedero McMillan, I think you're buying. I think it's going to be tough to buy him now, but or at least you're holding if you can't buy him. If you're a McMillan owner, you're just hoping for the best. I like the stretch here that they got. Um, what are we doing with Rico Dowdle? He's kind of looked a little bit, slowed down the past couple weeks. Now he got to work in the receiving game, 5 for 55 last week. Chuba's, complaining that he may have came back a little bit early from his injury. Maybe that's why he hasn't looked the same. But is it possible Chuba, starts eating into Dowdle a little bit more? Now Dowdle, like some of these previous, like before the previous 2 weeks, he was looking like a man, just on fire, like running like a psycho. Maybe he could just kind of, was fresh and kind of lost a little bit of that freshness, is kind of wearing down a little bit after just going all out. Quite possible, he was kind of playing a little bit banged up as well. So maybe Dowdle as a sell here. Um, I don't mind that, selling Dowdle. Maybe Chuba kind of steps a little bit more here and works in a little bit more. It's possible. And that's really it. I mean, Xavier Legette had a nice game. I don't know how excited I'm going to get about him. It's going to be kind of on and off for him. Tetaroa, maybe, you know what? He could be a sell, because he's coming off his best game. But it is possible that he starts to really kick things into gear. Maybe they figured some things out. Again, some of these matchups aren't bad, but maybe you see what you can get for him. Not the worst thing in the world. All right. Jamie says, I'm not watching anyway, just listening because I got to fall asleep soon. All right, man. Check us out tomorrow. Appreciate you jumping in, though, Jamie. Hopefully you're finishing strong here down the stretch in all your leagues. Frosty says, 126 says, yo, start one. Downs, Mooney, Yoshivash, PPR. All right, let's look at the schedule. It's Tuesday. It's way early in the week. A lot of things can change. But I'll give you my opinion here, Frosty126. Appreciate your question. Mooney, obviously, now we talked about it earlier with no Drake London. Let's look at Atlanta. Getting New Orleans. Downs is going to get Kansas City. Do not like that. Although, could maybe a little bit of a sneaky shootout. Yoshivash with no Jamar Chase, who's going to be suspended against New England. Higgins is going to be matched up with Christian Gonzalez. I don't know how much I trust Yoshivash. We've also seen Flacco kind of, throwing pick. Once you see Flacco throwing pick sixes, it's not a good sign, because then usually the wheels start to come off. And we've seen this from Flacco, multiple different times. It's the reason why the Browns traded him. He has 2-3 good games, or, got rid of him, whatever. 2-3 good games, maybe 4 good games, and then he just flops. And, he starts dinking and dunking. He starts getting afraid to be hit. But their defense is so bad. They're going to have to throw the ball so damn much. So, Yoshivash is not a terrible option. And then the last one, actually, between those three. So, I think I would go with Mooney. I mean, he's been terrible, but I mean, he's going to be like the only guy they're going to throw to there. But if I had to pivot, I'd probably would say Downs maybe. I don't know if I trust Yoshivash. I can't trust Yoshivash. So I would say Downs or Mooney. I think I'd go with Mooney there though, Frosty. Jamie also brings up Coker, who had a decent game last week. Could be a sneaky start this week. Deeper leagues. Niners allow most points to the slot. Maybe Coker, he kind of got it going. He had a couple of good games down the stretch last year. Again, this could be a sneaky high-scoring game against San Francisco. So Coker is not a terrible option. Maybe he goes 5 for 50. Maybe he scores here. Not a bad one there, Jamie. Anthony Makoso, $13.99. Appreciate you, brother. God for Dak, week 12. Dallas gets Philly this week. Dun, dun, dun. Now, Dak had a nice return game off the bye, tearing up the Vegas defense, getting a million possessions. The Vegas offensive line was terrible. But hey, maybe it's the addition of Quinn and Williams, too, helping him create a little bit more pressure. And then Goff gets the Giants at home. I'm going Goff here. Bounce back game. At home. Dallas goes, is at home, but they're getting Philly. I trust Goff much more here. Should definitely bounce back after facing that Philly defense. Look what the Philly defense just did to Goff. I mean, they just constant, consistent pressure. So, is Dak going to have a big time game? Is he going to be facing pressure against Philly? I think you have to play the matchup here and the fact that Detroit is home against the Giants. I'm going to go Goff there, brother. Appreciate the question. Like, subscribe if you haven't already. All right, back to the schedule here. If you guys have any other questions, waiver wire, trades, whatever you want, start sits, we'll get into all of it. Appreciate everybody jumping in. Let's talk about the Bears. I mean, this team has had some miracle wins. They beat Dallas. They beat the Raiders barely. Was it a block field goal to beat the Raiders? Or maybe I'm thinking of a different team there. But either way, they beat the Raiders. They beat the Commanders. The Commanders turned it over 3 times in that game. They beat New Orleans. Okay, big whoop. They lost to Baltimore without Lamar Jackson. They beat Cincinnati in their terrible defense. They beat the Giants with Jackson Dart getting hurt in that game. They had to come back to win that game. And then they beat Minnesota. Good win. I thought their defense played well. McCarthy's still missing some passes. And then when he's hitting guys on the money, they're dropping the ball. So Minnesota still has to figure things out. I'm not giving up on McCarthy just yet. Credit Caleb, like he's avoiding pressure. That's probably the best thing he's doing right now. His deep ball is atrocious. So he's missing a ton of deep shots. But he's avoiding pressure. He's making plays at the end of games. And now Devin Duvernay had that big punt return to put him into field goal position there against Minnesota. Oh, they could have lost that game too. So they get Pittsburgh at home this week. I actually don't like that matchup. I think Pittsburgh defense should do a pretty good job here against Chicago, but they could win this game again. They're going to be facing Mason Rudolph or Will Howard possibly. But again, they did lose to Tyler Huntley in week 8. So, and then they get Philly at Philly. That's not good. Then they go to Green Bay. Green Bay, their offense kind of, has been up and down. Their defense has not looked as strong, but it's still a tough matchup. That could be a shitty weather game too. And then home against Cleveland. That's not even really a great matchup either. That could be just a slugfest, low-scoring game. And then Green Bay again. And then San Francisco at San Francisco in the fantasy Super Bowl. But I don't know. These next 5 matchups, I'm not thrilled with. I really not. Honestly, I'm selling all my Bears. I'm selling Caleb. Again, he hasn't really been that great for fantasy anyway. He's had a couple big games, mostly against shitty defenses like Dallas and Cincinnati. And then he's kind of just, and again, they're winning these games, but they could lose 1, 2, 3, 4. Play Detroit in week 18 too. I mean, they could really have a rough stretch down the stretch here and lose like 4 of their last 7 games here, or maybe possibly even 5. So I'm selling a Dunze. I'm selling. There one thing that could continue to go here is their backfield. You're probably going to hold on to Swift just because you need running backs. But I mean, depending on what you get, I would try to sell all my Bears right now. I just do not like this schedule. I feel like their offense could get shut down the stretch here. Their running game, though, like Ben Johnson really has got it going, and they do run block well. But I'm not really excited about anybody here. So the Bears, they've had a good run of it. Again, a lot of easy matchups: Dallas, Vegas, Commanders, New Orleans, Cincinnati, Giants. And then it gets really tough down the stretch here with Pittsburgh, Philly, Green Bay. Cleveland is not an easy matchup either. Myles Garrett Denzel Ward, good secondary. Jim Schwartz calling the defense. Could be a shitty weather. That's the other thing we got to factor in here with Chicago. I mean, you got Pittsburgh. There's the best weather games they're going to have is San Francisco in the Super Bowl. But I mean, even that could have some wind, could have some rain. Up in Northern California, it's possible. So I'm selling my Bears, selling them all. Now I've been admittingly down on the Bears, a little bit biased against them for what they did to Justin Fields. Again, Justin Fields hasn't looked the best. I'm going to get into the Giants thing, but I think Caleb was a little bit overrated. Dunze I think is overrated, and Caleb's been up and down for fantasy. I think he's played good enough from an NFL standpoint, especially towards the end of these games. Again, avoiding pressure. DJ Moore, like, how do you not get DJ Moore involved? Like, that's just weird to me. Again, a couple of years ago with Fields, he had a career year. So, I mean, how many guys is Caleb really going to sustain anyway? The one good thing about their offense, I think, is their run game. But I'm selling on my Bears and see what I can get for them. Jamie says, I'm in on Burden down the stretch. I mean, I don't know, man. Like, again, you have a Dunze, you have Moore, you have the running game. Like, Burden might not be bad, like maybe for a game or two. But I don't know, like, especially with that schedule. Again, I don't know how many guys Caleb's going to make relevant. He's making some good throws, and the short intermediate throws have been pretty solid. His deep ball has been, I mean, he just throws like 10 yards over the guy's head constantly. And then you're going to get some weather games too. But I agree, though, like Burden, we saw him take the jump over Zacchaeus this week after Zacchaeus had like 3 or 4 terrible drops on some really good Caleb throws the week prior. But I just don't know how consistent he's going to be. So, but you know what? There is an outside chance that maybe things like click even more for this Bears team down the stretch too. With this Ben Johnson offense. I mean, it is quite possible. I'm just going to bet against that, considering their schedule, considering the elements, and the schedule they faced already and what they've shown us already too. I think again, the one thing I think they got going is the run game. Staying on the Bears here, Mike Heisel says 5047 says, would you drop DJ Moore to pick up Trey Benson or Jaden Reed PPR? Again, Trey Benson, I don't know what the deal is. Like, they haven't opened up his practice window now. When the initial injury hit, they said 4 to 6 weeks or 4 to 8 weeks with that knee injury. So it's, who knows? He may not play another down this year. It's quite possible. So unless you're really stacked at receiver, and you have a good record, I would hold Moore. It's just too risky to drop him for Trey Benson. Now, Moore hasn't been that great for fantasy, so I understand. Now, Jaden Reed, they just talked about him today. He might return to practice tomorrow. So, honestly, I think I may rather have Jaden Reed the rest of the way over DJ Moore. Now, Jaden Reed still has to contend with, Christian Watson returning. But Golden hasn't looked good. His snaps were down this week. Dontavian Wicks played more than him this week. So it'll probably be, and Jaden Reed's one of their best players by far. He arguably could be their best receiver. And you have Dobbs in the mix. But I think he'll have some big games down the stretch here with Green Bay. And when they have Watson, Dobbs, and Reed, I think that's a good news for Jordan Love as well. Now, Jordan Love still has his own issues. We'll get to Green Bay in a minute. But Mike, I think I would do it for Jaden Reed. Again, he could practice tomorrow. He may not play this week, but possibly next week. If you have somebody else to drop besides DJ Moore, I would prefer to do that, because DJ Moore, I mean, I don't. It's just so frustrating because they're not taking advantage of his talents. I think it's partly a Caleb issue, um, or mostly a Caleb issue. And they have a lot of guys too. Again, you know, DJ Moore has had 1,000 yards pretty much every single year, except for when Caleb Williams has been there. I mean, he's played with, a lot of shitty quarterbacks like Kyle Allen, still going with 1,000 yards back in Carolina. He had 1,300 yards with Justin Fields, and Fields missed a month. Tyson Badgett was throwing the ball to DJ Moore. So but it's not popping. It's not popping off with the Bears. So if you have somebody else you can cut, I'd rather do that. If not, I don't mind doing it for Jaden Reed. Again, Trey Benson, I'd like, but I don't know when the hell he's coming back. So if you think he could hold out one more week, but yeah, now's probably the time to strike on Jaden Reed. I don't know if you could hold out one more week. I don't know. Every league is different. I don't know, how much is out there in your wire. But again, if you have somebody else besides DJ Moore, I prefer to, maybe drop somebody else. But if you want to do it for more, I don't mind. Would you drop Joe Burrow for Jaden Reed as I have Drake May and Prescott? Wow. Like, does Cincinnati want to bring Joe Burrow back? I know Joe Burrow, if he's healthy, he's going to come back and play regardless, even if they're probably out of the playoffs. But there's a chance he could re-aggravate. It was a high degree turf toe injury. They were probably getting giddy because Flacco was looking good. They were getting some wins, but now Chase is suspended. Flacco looked like shit. They're probably not going to make the playoffs. So honestly, I think that would probably be the move I would make, dropping Joe Burrow. Now you hate to throw Joe Burrow back to some of your league mates if he possibly comes back, could help somebody. But I think that's the move I would make. I'd hold DJ Moore, in hopes that he kind of pops off. And Burrow, again, he may not come back this year. Maybe doesn't come back for another 3-4 weeks anyway. It could be earlier than that, though. I think they said sometime after the Thanksgiving. So it's going to be at least 2 more weeks, I think. So I think that's the move I would make, Mike. Thanks for your question, man. Like, subscribe if you haven't already. Okay, on to Cincinnati. Speaking of Burrow, New England this week, Baltimore, Buffalo, Baltimore, at Miami, Arizona. So that's not a great schedule either. But are we selling Jamar Chase? Are we selling T. Higgins? I mean, it's tough to give up those guys, right? Chase Brown, he's going to catch a bunch of dump offs. I think you just got to hope, you hold the Cincinnati guys because their defense is so shitty that they're going to be in a lot of shootouts by default, and they're going to produce fantasy points by default. So I think you're just holding the Cincinnati guys. The tight ends, Tanner Hudson starting to work with Noah Fant. So yeah, just holding. Yoshi Voss, I'm not getting too excited about. Chase will be back. And then Burrow, he could be on your radar. If you need quarterback help, you can add him. There is a possibility he could come back, maybe for the Week 14 game at Buffalo. But their schedule is not great. I mean, there's some tough matchups here. Baltimore's defense is healthier. Buffalo's secondary is still tough. They'll get a little healthier as well. They got to play New England. That's a tough matchup as well. So, and we just saw, Flacco look like shit against Pittsburgh. Now, T. Higgins scored, but, Jamar Chase didn't do much at all in this game. But Chase Brown has been much better since Flacco took it over, and he's going to get a lot of those dump offs. So I think you're holding all these guys. We got Frizzle in the chat. What's up, man? Is Devin Singletary a pickup? 100%. Getting the goal line carries. 2 touchdowns. Almost had 3 touchdowns last week. And against Green Bay, too. So if Jameis is in there, and you're going to get Dart back, maybe not this week, maybe the following week. But, yeah, I mean, 100% Devin Singletary is a pickup. He's going to give you some shitty games. He'll probably give you 7 points, but he's pretty much splitting with Tracy for the most part. And they'll be able to move the ball. And if he's going to get the goal line carries, that's, that has a lot of fantasy value. So, um, yeah, man, 100%. Should I drop Pat's defense for Browns or hold Pat's? And we'll talk about Cleveland right now. They get Vegas this week. Nice matchup. San Francisco's not great. Tennessee's nice in week 14. Chicago, not terrible. Buffalo's terrible. Week 17 against Pitt, not bad. So 2 good games here against Vegas and Tennessee, but the rest aren't really ideal. Fantasy playoffs, Chicago, Buffalo, Pitt. I mean, Chicago and Pitt aren't bad. Buffalo's not the best. And then the Pats, who we'll talk about, later. Um, Cincinnati, then the Giants, then the bye. So that doesn't help you, obviously, because you're going to have to pick up somebody else regardless. But then they get Buffalo, Baltimore, but the Jets in week 17. So, hmm. I don't know, man. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I think the one thing you like about the Pats defense is they're getting the Jets in the fantasy Super Bowl, which is better than Cleveland's matchup against Pitt. But who knows? I mean, maybe Rodgers is out. Maybe they're starting Mason Rudolph. So it could not be bad. And you're getting Vegas and Tennessee in the next, 2 or 3 weeks. So especially if you need to kind of get those wins to get into the playoffs. Frizzle, if you need to get into the playoffs, I think I like Browns in the short term 100% over New England. Because New England, obviously, you get the Giants, which is good. And Cincinnati against Flacco is not bad. I mean, Flacco just threw a pick six. I mean, that could definitely happen against New England. Again, once Flacco starts throwing pick sixes, fumbling and interception, and once you start seeing Flacco dinking and dunking, and I think defenses know that like Flacco was kind of just throwing it into tight windows to Higgins and Chase, and they're kind of ready for that now. And that's what Pittsburgh took that away from. Granted, Pittsburgh has good corners like Joey Porter Jr. But New England has the bye week 14. So in the short term, I like Cleveland. I mean, and long term, I think I would give the slight edge to New England. But if you wanted to go with Cleveland over New England, I don't hate it. Jags D is also an option. Not not a bad option. They have some decent matchups here as well. Arizona against Brissett is not terrible. Tennessee is good. Colts is not good, but Jets, Denver, Indy again. But you know what? I mean, Daniel Jones showing some signs of turning the ball over again. Fumbling, more pressure face. So I don't know. Jags defense is tricky. They look good one week, they look shitty another week. But honestly, I don't really mind these matchups because you get Daniel Jones twice, who could turn the ball over. The Tennessee offense is just atrocious. Brissett he could have some struggles. The Jets is a great matchup, and then Denver, like we've seen Bo Nix struggle at times too. So I don't mind Jags either, man. I mean, you got some good options here. I kind of play it week to week. It's hard to sometimes look out weeks in advance with these defenses, and I kind of almost like to play it in the short term. So in that aspect, I think I would go with Cleveland right now with the Vegas and Tennessee with the next 2 or 3 matchups, and then maybe you could pivot to something else after that. If something else looks juicier. So I kind of like to look at it in a short-term perspective because so many things could change. Like Myles Garrett could get hurt. You never know. The quarterbacks on multiple different teams could get knocked out or star receivers could get hurt. So it's kind of hard to project 3-4 weeks in advance. Like in the short term, I think Cleveland is the go-to for me. Yeah, I think Cleveland's the go-to there. Frizzle says that makes sense. Appreciate you, brother. Come back again. We'll be back Thursday for a matchup. We're going to go over every single matchup, every single fantasy relevant player. Every Monday, we do a recap. So make sure you guys are liking, subscribing to the show. Appreciate everybody in the chat tonight, hitting us with questions, keeping the show going. You guys can follow me on X at Fantasy Savvy. If you guys are on the Twitter X machine, hit me up over there. All right, next team here is going to be, well, we're still in Cleveland. We talked about their defense. Quinshon Judkins is a guy I think you could sell. Actually, I'm going to take that back. I kind of like the matchups here. Vegas, Tennessee, Buffalo's a good matchup, so I'm going to take that back. But the only thing you get scared about Quinshon is like we don't know what we're going to get out of Sanders and Gabriel the rest of the way. Fannin, you're holding. I'm sticking with Fannin, Judy, and Cedric Tillman. You can't even use these guys; they have no trade value. Njoku, Fan is the only one guy. Yeah, Judkins, I think you're holding because of this schedule. All right, Dallas, Philly this week, Kansas City. Damn, 2 rough games in a row. But Dak's probably gonna have to throw a lot in both those games. Then you get Detroit on the road, which is nice. Minnesota, Chargers, and then Washington and finish. So, they got some tough defenses here. Honestly, if you wanted to sell Dak, I'm kind of into it because Philly, he might not do much. Kansas City is going to be a tough matchup. Detroit might be a nice game for him. Minnesota could be tough. Chargers could be tough. Washington's nice. But if you wanted to sell them for something else, I don't mind it. CeeDee Lamb and Pickens, I think they'll be pretty steady. And for the most part, Javonte might be a sell for me here with these matchups coming up. I think Javonte might be a sell. Jake Ferguson might be a sell as well. It's going to be hard to get much for Dak. Like he may by default have some really good games here again because their defense might have improved a little bit with some new additions that they got. They're getting a little healthier. They got Overshawn back last week. They added Quinn and Williams. So their defense might finish a little bit stronger down the stretch, and maybe they don't get to as many shootouts. But they definitely could struggle versus Philly and Kansas City on offense. And even Detroit, Minnesota Chargers could be tough too. So, I'm not totally excited about this schedule down the stretch for Dallas. So Dak and Javonte, I think, will be my 2 sells there. See what you can get. Denver on a bye this week. Then they get Washington, Vegas. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful 2-game stretch there. And then the fantasy playoffs, Green Bay, Jacksonville, Kansas City. Not the best, though. So 2 great matchups. And then a tough little stretch in the fantasy playoffs. So that could be a sell for Denver players there. Dobbins looks like he's going to be out for the year. Harvey, not really getting many holes to run through. They were really run blocking great all year. We'll see if they start getting a little involved more on the outside, some more in the passing game. Cortland Sutton's kind of an Troy Franklin, he's been decent. Evan Ingram's been non-existent. So, yeah, I think, if your trade deadline is before the fantasy playoffs for some reason, that's like an automatic sell for me because the next 2 games are going to be nice for Denver. So if you need them to get into the fantasy playoffs, definitely holding. But if you're already in, if you got some depth, I don't mind trading the Denver players at this point. Next team up, Detroit. Get the Giants this week. Nice. At home. Green Bay at home. Dallas at home. At the Rams. Home against Pittsburgh. At Minnesota could be the one tricky game. Flores did a pretty good job on them a few weeks ago. But I mean, just these home games. I mean, they're gonna be beautiful for fantasy. I mean, JMO, Green Bay, Dallas, Rams. Even I know it's a tough defense, but it's gonna be a nice setting turf. I think this really sets up beautifully for Jameson Williams, James Wilson, Jameis Winston, Jameson Williams, who is on the thumbnail. And Dan Campbell takes over play calling duties. Now, is that going to remain for the rest of the year? Last game wasn't the best against Philly, but the Giants this week is beautiful. And then 3 straight home games. The Rams is not terrible. Pittsburgh at home is nice as well. So Jameson Williams, I love it. Maybe owners are, Jameson Williams owners maybe are trying to sell high. It's possible. So I'd be buying Jameson Williams. Now, the time to buy for Jameson Williams is probably a week or two ago, but I think you could still buy him. No Laporta. He's kind of taken over for Amon-Ra the last 2 weeks. Now, do they go back to Amon-Ra this week? Maybe to get their offense going a little bit again. It's quite possible. But James is going to be in the mix, man, especially with Laporta out. So he's a huge buy. Montgomery as well. You could probably get him for cheap if you need some running back depth. Goff, I'm buying down the stretch here. So, you're either buying or holding. I don't think you're selling any Lions down the stretch here. And Jameson Williams, he could have a really, really strong end of the year here. Green Bay down the stretch. Minnesota, Detroit, Chicago, Denver, at Chicago, and then home against Baltimore. Going to get Jaden Reed back possibly in a week or two. Josh Jacobs, he's got a knee contusion, supposedly hit the Meadowlands turf too hard. The Meadowlands turf strikes again. They got to fix that over there. There's been so many complaints by players about the turf there. And now Jacobs is banged up. But Minnesota at home this week. Then at Detroit's nice. Chicago's defense is playing a little bit better. Denver in the first round of the fantasy playoffs is not great. Then at Chicago again, and then Baltimore. So, the Detroit game is nice, but the fantasy playoffs, like the Chicago game, could be shitty weather. We could get a lot of shitty weather games. So I don't know, man. I feel like I'm selling. I think I might be selling my Green Bay guys. I mean, Jaden Reed and Watson will probably be decent down the stretch. They could have some big games. I like both these guys. Jacobs could be a sell for me, though. He's got the contusion. There's a couple of these games that could be rough. Detroit could get games scripted out. Denver's going to be a rough matchup first week of the fantasy playoffs. Chicago might not be a bad one, but Baltimore, they could get games scripted out too. So yeah, I don't know. I think I'm selling Jacobs. Jordan Love, I don't feel great about in some of these matchups either. Even with the return of Jaden Reed. Now, we could get some high-scoring games here as well. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of neutral, but I'm not thrilled, especially with that first round matchup against Denver. That kind of scares me. Like, that could be a total eraser game for your Green Bay players. Like, you're not going to really want to be using Green Bay players in that game. So, on that game alone, I feel like I want to see what else I can get for these Green Bay guys. I mean, some of them you're not, what are you really going to get for Jaden Reed? What are you really going to get for Christian Watson? Christian Watson, maybe. But he could be decently solid the rest of the way. Anyway, he could give you 10 points a game down the stretch, even though some of these matchups are tough. Jordan Love, I could see struggling a bunch in some of these games. But you never know. I mean, even with Reed back, could really elevate him. Jacobs, I think, is going to be a sell for me, though. Couple good game scripts against Minnesota, Chicago, but the contusion, The Denver matchup, let's sell. The Baltimore matchup in the Super Bowl, I'm not thrilled with either. All right, next game, next team rather. As we're working through here, Houston. Davis Mills, Stroud is going to be out again. Nico has been great. Jaden Higgins starting to come alive. You expect Stroud to come back against Indianapolis in Indy. And they get KC. Not great. Then they get Arizona at home. Vegas for the semis, and then the Chargers. So, yeah, I think I'm neutral here. I'm holding Nico. Um, I might be buying Jaden Higgins. If you can get some Jaden Higgins, I think he's going to fully emerge. Now they're still using Hutchinson and Noel and Christian Kirk. The one guy I would sell is Dalton Schultz. I think he's going to fall off once Stroud comes back. And Davis Mills has kind of elevated him the past 3 weeks, where we've seen him 2 or 3 weeks, whatever it was. So I'd probably sell Schultz. I'd hold Nico, and then I'd be buying Jaden Higgins. And then their defense, I mean, you could play them the rest of the way here. So they're a defense that you could just start every week down the stretch. So if they're out there, you could pick them up. And then also Fairbairn is coming back soon. So if he was cut, he's a solid kicker. He makes most of his field goals. Now, maybe after the injury, he could be a little rusty. And the Buffalo game isn't great with Davis Mills. But after that, could get a little bit better down the stretch. So, yeah, Fairbairn is a guy that I want to add possibly down the stretch here for a kicker. Colts. Ooh, not good for the Colts here. Not good for the Colts. I'm not liking this Colts schedule. Kansas City, coming off the bye. Then they get Houston. Then they go at Jacksonville. Now, Jacksonville, again, I think they're a little overrated as defense, but they do show some signs. But then they go at Seattle. San Francisco for the semis is not bad. That's actually a really good matchup. And then Jacksonville again at home. So not a terrible semis and Super Bowl, but Seattle in the first week of the playoffs, not great. And the next 2 weeks against Kansas City and Houston. So if you're struggling, if you have Jonathan Taylor, you probably have a really good record. Now, I do have a last place team, believe it or not, with Jonathan Taylor on my team. But that's because I took Mike Evans, Terry McLaurin, and Ricky Pearsall at receiver. And obviously that's been a disaster. But I have Taylor, Genty, and Brees Hall as my running backs. And they've been good, but my receivers have been hideous. I don't know who my tight end quarterback in that league is, but it just hasn't been good. I think Jaden Daniels might have been my quarterback. So believe it or not, it wasn't. I don't think it was because I drafted bad. It's just that injuries hit. But if you have Jonathan Taylor, I have a lot of teams with Jonathan Taylor that are at the top, first place as well. You're most likely in the top of your league. Are we trading Jonathan Taylor? As crazy as it sounds, these matchups aren't great. You just can't trade Jonathan Taylor. You just can't do it. You'd have to get a really unbelievable haul back. I think it's overthinking a little bit. Now, Daniel Jones, I think I'm selling him. Now, I'm a little bit biased against Daniel Jones. I was rooting for Anthony Richardson to get the job. I didn't expect him to play this well. Now, he's showing some signs on the stretch of fading a little bit down the stretch. So it's quite possible he could falter down the stretch here. Michael Pittman is a guy I might be selling. I'm not selling Alec Pierce, though. I believe in Alec Pierce. I feel like Alec Pierce may overtake Pittman. And then Tyler Warren, he showed against Atlanta, who was like the top defense against tight ends, that he's kind of matchup proof. Now, their defense might be a little bit overrated in general. Kansas City and Houston is tough in Seattle. But I'm still holding Tyler Warren. I'm still holding Taylor. I think Jones and Pittman are the two Colts that I'm selling. I'm buying Alec Pierce still, despite the schedule, or at least definitely holding him down the stretch here as well. All right. Jacksonville. We get Arizona at Tennessee Indy, Jets, at Denver, and then Indy again. So kind of up and down. Denver's not great in the semis. That's not ideal, but I think their schedule's good enough where you can kind of just hold these guys. I mean, obviously, you don't want to use Trevor Lawrence. Brian Thomas Jr., he has no value. But are you buying, to sell him? But are you going to be buying Brian Thomas Jr. here? No Travis Hunter. We saw Jacoby Myers have a pretty decent game. So that could hurt him a little bit. And his connection with Lawrence hasn't been good. And Lawrence really hasn't looked good anyway. So, what are we doing here? I think I don't know if you want to buy him, and you're not going to really be able to sell him. ETN, I think he's going to be solid the rest of the way. And then, I know Tuen was playing good. So that could be a little bit scary. Like Tuen looked good. So maybe that hurts ETN. But honestly, this is the best way their offense is going to move the ball is by running. And I think ETN is still going to be productive even with the presence of Tuen. Now they did have the great game script in that game too that did allow Tuen. So I think I'm going to hold ETN. I don't think I'm going to be selling him. Got some good matchups here. The Jets, Tennessee. I'm not scared by the Colts. Denver's not great, but so I'm going to hold their running backs. And keep an eye out for Brenton Strange on the wire there too. All right, Kansas City. Try to breeze through these last few teams here. Oh, we're about halfway through. Kansas City, home against the Colts, at Dallas, home against Houston, home against the Chargers, at Tennessee, and then Denver in the fantasy Super Bowl. So Denver and Houston suck. But Dallas, Tennessee, Chargers pretty nice. Colts. We don't know what's going to happen with this backfield. Is Bashard Smith ever going to get a decent chunk down the stretch here? Possibly. Andy Reid, again, has done this with Jerick McKinnon in the past where he's waited to the end of the year and the playoffs to utilize him. And I think we may see that with Bashard Smith. Pacheco might be out another week, maybe 2 weeks. So it's going to be a lot of Hunt. They mixed in Elijah Mitchell. It was CH the week before. I think they just need to give Bashard Smith some more looks and see what he could really do with more usage. But Hunt's kind of just been solid. He's moving piles. He's getting in the end zone. So he'll remain to be the guy. But there's really nobody to buy or sell here. Like, buying Kelsey, buying Rashee Rice. Maybe you could buy Rashee Rice, off that down game. I don't know. It's just kind of a hold thing. The Chiefs here. I don't see anybody. I think you're just holding. I don't think you really see any sells and buys. Las Vegas. Now we just saw their offensive line look absolutely hideous. I mean, it was atrocious. Credit to Dallas defense. I think they're getting better, obviously, with the new additions with Overshawn and Quinton Williams back. But it's going to be a rough go. It's been a rough go all year for Vegas. And it was weird. Like Pete Carroll came out and said they wanted to get Bowers involved, so they want to run the ball. But that was honestly their best path to try to win that game was kind of slow the game down and get Genty, more involved in the ground. And at some point, they just couldn't run the ball anymore. But Cleveland's not a great matchup. Myles Garrett is going to go nuts. The Chargers defense should be nice. And then Denver. Oh, my God. Philly. Dude. It's going to be bad. Ugh. And I'm not happy about this because I have a team with Bowers and Genty on the same team. But this is going to be brutal. The Giants, weeks in the Super Bowl is going to be nice. But Philly, Houston in the fantasy playoffs, the first two matchups, like you're selling. So you got to sell Genty. I know a lot of people have been talking about that. I actually haven't even been looking at their schedule. I didn't even realize it was this bad. Bowers, I think even with this schedule, I think he'll be decent regardless. But and Genti actually might not be terrible because I think they'll get him involved in the passing game too. And those are the two best players. But the rest of these guys, Tucker, Jack Betch, um, forget about like even trying to use these guys. Like you might just drop these guys at this point. Tyler Lockett, if you were expecting gaming out of him. But yeah, if you could sell Genti and even Bowers possibly, again, you want to get a lot for Bowers, especially Genti, see what you could come up with. But again, Genti, they're going to be down by a lot in these games. In some of these games. And Genti might be decent for passing work, but I mean, he just played against Dallas and only had like 9 fantasy points. So, yeah, he's a sell, man. Yeah, I'm not happy about that. I'm not happy about that Genti schedule. So, you got to sell. It sucks. It really sucks. Philly and Houston, first two. That is going to be, I mean, Philly defense is going to eat. Cleveland defense is going to eat this week. Oh my God. They're going to eat. Denver, Philly, Houston. 3. I mean, that's just going to be disastrous. Disaster. All right, we got a question from Jay Vital. 0056. Appreciate you, bro. Says Higgins and JMO for Rico. I have Puka and Rice, Kyron, and A-Chain plus a Dunze. Which Higgins are you talking about? Jaden Higgins or T. Higgins? I'm assuming it's Jaden Higgins. There's no way you're giving up T. Higgins and JMO for Rico. I would never do that. But you have Puka and Rashi and Kyron and Achan. Plus a Dunze. So if it's Jaden Higgins, let me know, Vital, if it's Jaden Higgins. I'm assuming it is. Jaden Higgins and JMO for Rico. So you're going to get Rico. Man, I don't know. I like JMO down the stretch a lot. I think Jaden Higgins is going to emerge down the stretch as well. I think Rico has a chance to kind of fall out. I think he may have went all out those previous games, and he might start to fall back a little bit. Rams, they do have a bye in week 14, New Orleans, Tampa, Seattle. I don't know, man. For some reason, I don't want to do the deal. And you do have Kyron and Achan, which is pretty nice. Who are your other running backs? I think I would hold Higgins and JMO. Especially if it's T Higgins, but I'm assuming it's Jaden again. But appreciate your question, man. I just think I would try to trade, maybe work another trade. I think Rico, we may have seen the best from him. I don't know if he's going to have repeat performances like that, but it's possible. Again, Dave Canales, his system backs whether they're running or receiving the ball, and he had 555 last week. Rico, I mean, they're going to be solid. And could we see more Chuba down the stretch here? But usually he kind of likes to use one back. But they are paying Chuba a lot of money, so I don't know. That's a tough one, man. I don't mind it. I think it could blow up in your face, but it could work out too. For some reason, I just think my gut is telling me to hold JMO and Higgins. I think JMO is going to be better than Rico down the stretch, my opinion. And Higgins is kind of the throwing. And again, he might emerge a little bit down the stretch. Now, do you really need Higgins with Puka and Rice and Adunze, who's going to be up and down the rest of the year? But, and it's good to add that extra running back depth. I don't know whether running backs you have, but on the surface, I'm going to say no. But if you wanted to do it, I'm not going to totally hate it because I think Rico will be decent enough. He'll have some good games on the stretch. But very, very close. But I'm going to say, maybe try to work something else. Herb good. Herb good. Yeah, Herb is good sometimes. 8404 says need help at tight end with Gatson on a bye. And now Laporta injury on waivers is Theo Johnson, Mason Taylor, Noah Fant, Kate Otten, Colson Loveland, or AJ Barner. You got a lot of guys there, man. Giants get Detroit this week. Taylor, I don't like Taylor. I would give the nod to Theo over Taylor and Noah Fant. Kate Otten is interesting. Had a down game last week, but was good before that for the past couple of weeks. They get the Rams. I think that's a close one between Theo and Kate Otten. Colson Loveland, nah. And then Barner, I know he had a monster game last week, but I don't see him doing a lot of Tennessee. It's between Theo and Kate Otten for me. And I think I'm going to go with Kate Otten against the Rams. Let me just see the matchup here between the Rams. How good the Rams are against tight ends. Let's see. Let's look at the last 4 weeks. Actually, we'll look at the whole year. What happened here? What's going on here, bro? All right, let's go with Kate Otten. I think I give him the slight bump over Theo. Again, that's close between him and Theo. The Rams aren't great against tight ends. 22nd overall. And then Barner just had 70 against them. Kittle had 84. Juwan Johnson scored against them. So, yeah, this might be a back to Kate Otten this week, and the Rams are probably going to pass over the Bucks. We just saw the Bills light them up. So let's go with Kate Otten. I think I agree with that. Gargantuan Monkey Fist says, what do you think of Darnell Mooney this week? It's hard to trust Darnell Mooney. He hasn't done anything all year. He's like constantly like dropping passes and stumbling on his feet. Doesn't seem like he's tracking the ball well. Now, this guy did have 1,000 yards season about 3-4 years ago with Justin Fields. So he got it in him. He had 900 yards last year. Had some decent games with Cousins last year. So, I'm not expecting a lot, but there's no London. They're playing New Orleans, not a terrible matchup. So, I think his floor is like 10 points, maybe 8-10 points, something like that. Herb Good says, I was leaning on also. Could be a high scoring game. Yeah, definitely could. What is the total in that game? Total in the Rams game, 49. The total in the Giants game It's 50. So that's also a high total. So, Jameis is going to be slinging for sure. So it's very, very close. Let me just look how the Detroit is against tight ends before we lock this one up, man. But I think both are solid. I think both have nice floors this week. Both have nice upside. The Lions are a little bit better against tight ends. 13th overall. They did shut down Dallas Goedert last week, 2 for 24. Ertz did have 4 for 54 against them. Kelsey 6 for 78. Otten went for 7 for 65. Those were the two highest performances. But I trust Baker Mayfield, and I don't know yet, man. I mean, Jameis might throw the ball like 50 times this week, though. we didn't really see it last week because the weather, I think, and they had the lead. They were running the ball a lot. They're not going to really be able to run the ball this week. Jameis is going to have to throw a lot. And again, and if Slayton's out again, that's close. That's a close one, man. That's a really close one. But both those guys are good. So it's really up to you. I think both are solid. I think both could work out. Row T7 says, should I trade Rice, Genty, and Henry for JT? Oh my God. Dude, that's too much. It's too much. Now, I don't like Genty down the stretch. I just talked about that. The schedule is absolutely brutal. But Henry and Rashi for JT, and JT's got a tough schedule too. I don't think you can do that trade, man. That's too much. You got to get more back, or try to change that trade up. It's just you're giving up too much. You're giving up 3. Rice, you're giving up too much, man. I mean, I know JT, but you're still giving up too much. Herb Good 8404 says I have McConkey on a bye and Chase suspended, so I'm debating between Tez Johnson and Mooney. I'm going Tez Johnson. I know Ted Johnson had a shitty game. Bills were allowing the least amount of points to receivers, though. Baker should get back on track here. A little bit of a revenge game for Baker. Did play for the Rams. Rams shipped him off. What should I look to trade Genty for? That's a good question, man. That's a good question. Let's see. Let's see, brother. What do you need? First off, do you need receiver? Do you need running back? Running backs, maybe Chase Brown. Is not a bad one. Maybe you could get Kenneth Walker, who I think is going to start to emerge. Now, I wouldn't do that straight up. Maybe I would ask the owner to throw in a little something else with Kenneth Walker, because Kenneth Walker obviously has had his own issues. Same with Trevion. I think maybe Trevion and something. The owners might think you're crazy. Might want to do it straight up. But these are the type of backs I'm thinking about here. Let's see. Chase Brown, ETN possibly. But again, I want to see if I don't know if I want to do those straight up. Chase Brown, I think I would do straight up. ETN, I think it's like even. And you could even going down backwards with that. Kenneth Walker, I think if you can get him to throw another piece in, Trevion with another piece, because I think Ramondre will get some work now. I think it's gonna be a split between them when Ramondre comes back. If you could do it for Henry, maybe, and maybe throw something else in, I would do that as well. Receivers. Let's see. JMO. I do that straight up for JMO. If you're pretty deep at running back and you can move off Genty and you need a receiver, again, you have to have good running back depth to make that move. Otherwise, you don't want to leave yourself. But maybe you can get JMO and a running back and throw him a receiver too. But JMO, I like down the stretch. Alave, I like down the stretch. I think you could do that probably as well. Maybe you can get Alec Pierce and something for Genty. Ricky Pearsall probably. Think he'll have a pretty decent and stretch. I don't know. Maybe you can get him to throw in something else. So those are the type of things I'm looking at. Again, depends on what you need. He says my running backs are Genty, Harvey, Henry, and Benson. So if you move off of Genty, you're left with Harvey and Benson. That's not good. So you got to get a running back in any deal that you make. And my receivers are Rice, Harrison Jr., and Olave. So you have Olave, so obviously you can't trade for him. Yeah, I mean, like I said, maybe Chase Brown. Maybe you could do a 1-for-1 swap with Chase Brown. I think I'd rather have Chase Brown the rest of the way. I just think he's a little bit safer. I don't know. Genty might just give you some dud games with that schedule. I mean, again, the schedule's brutal. Could it burn you? Possibly. I think it'll be close enough. But again, maybe try to get him to throw in a little something. Say, here, I'll give you Genty for Chase Brown, but give me another receiver or another running back. Try to maybe trade Genty and get 2 pieces back. But if you could do it straight up for Derrick Henry or throw him a something else for Henry, that's something you could do too. But come back to me, man. Hit me up in the comments, whatever trades you're getting, and I'll answer you on the comments after the show, or hit me up on X at Fantasy Savvy. See it scrolling along there. Like, subscribe, and share. Appreciate all you guys with the questions tonight. Let's keep working through this schedule. We want to close the show out in under 2 hours. Vegas, we just talked about Rams, Tampa, Carolina, Arizona, Detroit, Seattle. And I mean, the Rams you're holding. You can't, I mean, their offense is too damn good. You're not selling anybody. I know Puka's starting to take a little bit less snaps because they're playing so much 13 personnel with all these freaking tight ends. Terrence Ferguson, like, he's so talented, but it's like, and I know Higbee's going to be out this week. I don't know if they'll ever really feature him. I think they like this 13 personnel. So is it hurting Puka a little bit? I still think you can't sell Puka, though. Like, you're just holding all your Rams. They're just completely matchup proof. So not much to really say about them. Blake Corum, again, the guy that you want to be rostering in case something happens to Kyron down the stretch. Chargers have a bye this week, and then they get Vegas, Philly, Kansas City, which sucks. Kansas City, then Dallas in the semis, though, is nice. And then Houston in the finals. Their offensive line stinks, man. Vegas is going to be fine, obviously. But Philly's going to be brutal. That might be terrible. Like, we could see another game like we just saw against Jacksonville. Kansas City, same thing. And then Houston, the same thing. This might be a bad end for Justin Herbert. And also, all you guys waiting for Omarion Hampton to come back. I think I'm selling. I'm selling Hampton. Now, Hampton might, I'm selling Hampton. I'm selling Hampton. I'm selling Herbert. I'm selling QJ. I might be selling Gatson. I think the only guy I may keep is Ladd, but I don't know. Honestly, you could sell. You might have to sell all your Chargers. I don't know, man. This is the way their offensive line is playing. I don't know, how much healthier they're going to get in these next couple of weeks. I mean, Vegas looks beautiful. So maybe after this game, if your trade deadline hasn't hit yet, or if it's after next week, then you sell, because Philly, Kansas City, Dallas, that's bad, man. Dallas is great, obviously, but even Dallas could present. I mean, it's been brutal. We've seen a couple times this year where the Chargers played Jacksonville, Washington. Their defenses were, their offense was a race. Now, Herbert is good enough to overcome that. Harbaugh could figure some things out. Maybe you still want to get something solid, but I'm going to see what I can get from my Chargers right now, including Ladd, who I love. But he would be the one guy I want to get the most. But Hampton, I don't know. I'm not excited about this at all for the Chargers down the stretch. Miami, bye this week. Then New Orleans, Jets, Pittsburgh, since it's beautiful for Miami. So Jalen Waddle, you want to go buy. A-Chan, you're not going to be able to get. Darren Waller, I mean, if he's out there on your wire, he's on the IR. Maybe if he comes back, he could do something. So I don't mind that one. If he's out there on your wire, you could put him on the IR. The rest of the like Tua, I mean, Tua might have a good little stretch down here, man. New Orleans and the Jets, not bad. Pittsburgh could be rough, but Cincinnati, Tampa, like Tua might finish strong down here. So if you're in a super flex league, I think that's the type of league you want to make a move. A one quarterback league, you don't want to rely on Tua, but super flex, you might want to do it. I actually may do that on one of my dynasty super flexes. But Waddle is the guy to target. The rest of the weapons, though, Malik Washington, I feel like Waller could do something if he comes back. He could get hurt again. But Achane and Waddle really should have real strong finish. Their schedule is very, very nice down the stretch here coming off the bye. So now is the time to go get your Miami Dolphins. I can't believe I'm saying that. Sebastian is in the chat. Says, hello, Steve. What's up, man? First time viewer. Appreciate you, brother. Doing well. Hope you're doing well. Like, subscribe, share if you can. Appreciate it, man. Let me know if you have any questions. We'll answer them. All right, next team, Minnesota. Green Bay, Seattle, Washington, Dallas, Giants, Detroit. So McCarthy, he's making some good throws. He's missing some throws. They just have not been able to have a 4-quarter game all year with McCarthy. I still believe in this kid. I still think they're going to get this passing game going. At Green Bay, at Seattle is not great, but the rest of the schedule after that, going into the fantasy playoffs, you get Washington, which is nice. Washington's defense, even with Dan Quinn, you're taking over the defense. Then you get Dallas. Again, Dallas will improve a little bit. Still beautiful. Giants, and then Detroit. So I love it. So McCarthy, I'm buying in Superflex. In Dynasty, I'm still buying McCarthy. Aaron Jones, even Jordan Mason, possibly. We saw him get into the mix. They kind of gave them a spark down the stretch. But Justin Jefferson and Addison, like people might be down on them a little bit because everybody's panicking on McCarthy. But I'm going to say right now, I believe in McCarthy. I think he'll play better after maybe these next 2 games might be rough. And then maybe the time to buy is after these next 2 games if your deadline doesn't hit yet. But going into the fantasy playoffs, I love it. So I think the Vikings are going to put up some nice fantasy games. So Justin Jefferson, Addison, even TJ Hawkinson, you're not buying him. He might be on your wire at this point. I cut him in a freaking high stakes league last week. So I'm buying it. So yeah, Minnesota, I love it. Love it. New England, Cincinnati, Giants the next 2 weeks. Love that. Then they get the bye, not great. But then Buffalo, Baltimore, beautiful. Beautiful for New England. Drake May, Trevion, even Ramondre, Diggs might be nice. Mac Hollins. You guys ever see the YouTube videos of Mac Hollins with all these like tips he does? Actually some of them are helpful. Pretty knowledgeable dude. Was the Bills' leading receiver last year, but you feel good about your New England Patriots. So buy any Patriots that you can get. If somebody cut Ramondre, I'd pick him up. I could see a nice little, even with Trevion out there, you feel decent. Kyle Williams, keep your eye on him. Didn't do anything the week before, but still could do something down the stretch. Definitely keep your eye on him. Be ready to pounce if something happens with injury or if he gets a little bit more of a playing time boost. Now, Bude could be coming back too. That would hurt him. And Diggs probably. Bude was having some nice games. He could be a nice pickup down the stretch too. So yeah, New England we're in on down the stretch here. 100%. New Orleans, they have a really good schedule now. Um, their defense might not be bad here. Atlanta, Miami, Carolina, Jets, Tennessee. That's a pretty good run. This is a veteran defense. Shout out to Joey Brown. He actually was bringing them up. Heard him talk about them on the Monday show, on the reaction show the guys did. You got 4 high stakes players, who play on NFC, FFPC, talking about, recap and giving some tidbits. So check that out on Mondays around 7:00, hosted by Joe Carlton. Shout out to him for bringing those guys over. But yeah, nice little matchup here. I mean, you get Kirk Cousins, you get Tua. Baker's not great, but then you get Carolina, Jets, Tennessee. Wow. New Orleans defense might be the sneaky defense. But not just that, their offense. Tyler Shuck he looked good. I mean, he's making some plays. He looks better than Rattler. Olave looks nice. Kamara might have a nice stretch down the stretch here. Juwan Johnson. Maybe you could buy low on Kamara right now. Kamara really hasn't had a good season. He might have a strong stretch down the street. He might have a nice. So Kamara, Olave, you're buying. Juwan Johnson, you're buying. I'm kind of pissed I traded Juwan Johnson in a tight end premium superflex league for a 3rd rounder. Could probably utilize him a little bit. But yeah, he's looking better. I thought he was kind of dead when Taysom Hill and Boston Moreau were coming back, but they're still playing him. He's producing. Is there a second receiver there? Probably not. For the Saints, they're going to mix in, but Olave is the one guy. So yeah, Saints looks very, very nice. Giants, Detroit, New England, by Washington, Minnesota, Las Vegas. So yeah, Tracy, Singletary, Wandale, Theo Johnson, Dart. If Jameis has to start a couple of these games, it's fine. He'll produce. He'll help these guys produce. So the Giants, yeah, you're holding the Giants. I think, you can't really be able to sell on these Giants. So yeah, Giants is nice. You feel good. You don't have to be panicky about any of your Giants players or Dart. You feel pretty good there. Jets. All right, before we get into the Jets, because it's going to be a little bit long one, let's answer CYDC53's question. Would you trade Ibuka for Rome and Diggs? Wow. I know Ibuka's been a little bit frustrating of late. And Diggs has been coming on. We just talked about New England's schedule. Diggs alone could be better than Ibuka down the stretch. And then you get the bonus of a Dunze, who I don't really like, but he'll have some big games. But Ibuka, Dunze is like, he'll have a good game, then he'll give you nothing. He'll have a good game, he'll give you nothing. And we're getting Godwin back at some point for Tampa. We didn't talk about Tampa yet. But they get Rams, Arizona, New Orleans, Atlanta, Carolina. So their schedule is very nice. Beautiful schedule for Tampa. So, I mean, Ibuka might really have a great stretch here. Evans is going to be gone for the year. I'm not worried about him. They're going to get Bucky back possibly this week. So that could hurt. That could help Ibuka too, though. Probably helps him more than it hurts him. Godwin's going to affect him, but Ibuka's that could help him too. The Godwin presence. Take a little bit more pressure off Ibuka, because I know Buffalo was throwing a lot of coverage at Ibuka last week. So that's a close one, man. You're going to get Bude back for New England. Ah, man. I mean, it could work out. If you get Diggs, like said, Diggs could be better. But for me, I think I don't want to trade Ibuka. I think that schedule for Tampa is pretty nice. I mean, you got no weather. Look at this: Rams, Arizona, dome. I mean, a dome, home, home in Florida. Hurricane season's over. This is the dry season in Florida now. It's not going to rain much anymore. Atlanta, 3 straight home games, beautiful. Then you get at Carolina, another good weather, and at Miami. So, um, but you're getting 2 good pieces there, man. You know what? It's not a trade that I think you need to make. Um, but I don't know if you make the trade, it backfires on you. I feel like it'll work out. I just think Abuka could have some big time games. We've kind of seen Diggs like, good, bad, good, bad. Is he really going to take the true featured role? He could, but they do have a lot of guys. They do kind of spread it around in New England. It's a little bit more concentrated in Tampa. But we do have Godwin. But I don't know, man. Like, I don't feel like it's a trade you really need to make. But if you wanted to make it, I think it could work out. Um, I think it has a better chance of working out than burning you. But I think for the most part, I think it might end up just being like a neutral trade. So I don't know. It's just kind of a weird. Trades are really hard to predict. I don't know if we want to move off of Buka with that schedule right now. And the consistency he could possibly give you, where Roman Diggs could be a little bit more inconsistent. And then you're kind of struggling who to utilize. I mean, you're going to throw Diggs in pretty much every week. Rome kind of could be like a guy like he could be frustrating down the stretch. So that's just my thoughts on that. You make the decision, man. But I do like Ibuka's schedule. And he's shown that, he's a pretty solid NFL receiver. And with Godwin back, he's not going to get the full attention. Dak or Purdy? Appreciate you, man. Thank you. See why. Art 3 Cable says Dak or Purdy this week. Let's see. We had a question before. It was Dak or Goff. We went with Goff because Dak's got Philly. Phillies, they re-upped, man, on their defense. They look pretty damn good against Detroit last week. Now, Goff on the road is a little bit different, obviously. When Goff faces pressure, he turns into a pumpkin. We've seen it time in, time out. Dak had a nice game. Last week goes against the Raiders. Could struggle in this game against Philly. And then Purdy comes back last week. Looks great against Arizona. Gets Carolina. I'm going Purdy. We're going Purdy. R3 Cable this week. All the best in your leagues this week. All right, let's keep moving through the schedule. A few more teams, then we'll get the heck out of here again. We got to finish this under 2 hours. New Orleans, beautiful. Giants is beautiful. Jets. Now, they're moving off Justin Fields to Tyrod Taylor. Now, I'm a Jets fan. This is a signed helmet by Justin Fields. I supported the Marty Lyons Foundation in Long Island charity. Won this in an auction. I was excited about Fields coming to town. Always been a fan of Fields, mostly because I liked him in fantasy. He's been a great fantasy producer. I backed him in fantasy this year. I drafted him in a lot of leagues. I always took another quarterback with him. But he's had a raw deal throughout his career with the Bears. Playing behind one of the worst offensive lines, some of the worst defense, terrible coaching. He's had his best receiver was Darnell Mooney for years until they brought DJ Moore along the 1 year, and DJ Moore had a career season, 1,300 yards with Fields. Fields missed a month. Mooney had 1,000 yards with Fields. Cole Kmet had a career season with Fields. But he's had games where he's thrown to Dante Pettis, Jesse James, Equanimus St. Brown, some of the worst ranked offensive lines in the NFL, some of the worst defenses in the NFL, some of the worst coaching in the NFL. And then they throw him off the team for Caleb. And then they give all these weapons, multiple first-round picks, for Caleb, better offensive line, Ben Johnson. And then Fields goes to the Steelers, 4-2, efficient, 6 touchdowns, 1 pick, 4-2. They benched him for Russ Wilson. Russ Wilson has a couple of good games and then falters down the stretch. And then the Jets pay him $30 million for 2 years. And, outside of Garrett Wilson, their weapons were Lazard, a rookie, and Mason Taylor, um, Tyler Johnson, Arian Smith, and then Wilson gets hurt, and they have Arian Smith, Tyler Johnson, um, A.D. Mitchell, John Mechie just signed to the team. His offensive line has not looked good. Their defense has not played well. They have a rookie head coach, experienced coach in the NFL for sure. But Engstrand's a rookie offensive coordinator. The only time he called plays was with, I think, an Arena League team. They're like 25th in offense. So he's always had a bad shake in the NFL for his surrounding talent. Now, Fields, the biggest issues I have with him is he's a slow processor. That's 100% true. He's very slow moving in the pocket. His mechanics are a little funky. He misses some easy throws. He doesn't take throws that are open. But honestly, there hasn't been a lot of layup throws at all this year for him. Very little layup throws. The scheme has been okay. The receivers have had very little separation. There's been a ton of pressure on him. He's made some good throws. There's been some drops. We saw it last week with A.D. Mitchell, a couple drops, a nice deep ball by Fields. So I think it's unfair to bench him considering the circumstances. The last time the Jets did this, we moved to Tim Boyle. I talked about this earlier. They said Tim Boyle is going to be better. The media and the fans are just so loud in New York that, then the coaches just have to do something. So they're saying we need to evaluate talent better, evaluate the talent better. You're not going to see that with Tyrod Taylor. He's going to take some more shots. He's going to turn the ball over way more. So my prediction is Tyrod Taylor may move this offense a little bit better at times, but it's still going to be shitty. Does he improve, the offense a little bit? Does he help Breece Hall? Probably not. I mean, the read option stuff probably creates more stuff for Fields, but maybe Tyler puts him in a little bit better scoring position, and then Breece Hall has better chance at touchdown, but it's not going to improve much. I think it's kind of neutral for Breece Hall, to be honest with you. A.D. Mitchell and Mechie, Mechie I kind of like, he scored last week. And I've always liked John Mechie a lot. So I'm a little bit intrigued by Mechie. Like I would consider him. A.D. Mitchell. I don't know. One of these guys is going to be consistent. Taylor, I don't know what to say. Like I can't get too excited about the Jets, but I mean, if you're in a deeper league, you want to take a deep shot on Mitchell or Mechie, I don't mind it. But what I think is going to happen is Taylor might play one good game, or he may just struggle or get hurt. He does get hurt a lot. And then they may go to that kid Brady Cook after that. Like they may demote Fields to the third because they want to see what they have in Brady Cook. And that could either work one of two ways. Cook may have a big game, and then the Jets fans are going to get so hyped up and be out of control. And then it's just going to end terribly. He's going to have another terrible game, like 2 games in a row. And then they'll probably go back to Fields at some point. Like we may see Fields back by like week 14 or 15. So it's neutral for Breece Hall. I would take a shot on Mechie or Mitchell if you're desperate. Mason Taylor might be decent. But whatever their Baltimore, Atlanta, Miami, Jacksonville, the schedule's not bad. The Jets are the Jets. But that's my thoughts on the whole thing. A couple more questions here. The Holy Trinity, 1349. I appreciate you, Holy Trinity. Welcome to the show. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Juckins or Wandale in the flex. Interesting. Wandale is very, very juicy this week against Detroit in a 50 total with Jameson slinging the ball over the place. But Juckins, beautiful matchup as well against Vegas. So that's a close one. I think I'm going to go with the running back though, and Judkins. Could be a little bit scary with Sanders now. You know, I think Wandale might be safer, and he might be the better overall play. Can you find a way to get both of them in your lineup somehow, Trinity? That's what I would try to do if I could. Um, but if you had to pick one, I think I'd go with the running back. Yeah, I think I'd go with Judkins there against Vegas. I think that's the move. He's going to get a lot of work this week, and should be able to fall into the end zone. I would think at least once against Vegas, especially with Cleveland giving him a ton of possessions because their offensive line is terrible, the Raiders, and they're going to turn the ball over a lot probably, and Cleveland will probably have a lot of good field position. And honestly, I thought Shador looked pretty good on that last drive. He came in early, off the bat, threw that pick. But this week, he should get all the reps with the ones. And I think he'll play a little bit better. And against Vegas, it's a nice matchup. It's a good time for him to shine. So it's close. Wandale certainly has a lot of upside. I'll give the slight edge to Judkins. Thank you for the question. Zombies fans says, I just traded Henderson and Shaheed for a CD. Did I cook? Yeah, I like it. I think Henderson may have a strong finish to the year. They have a nice schedule, but I do think Ramondre is going to come back and mix in for sure. And Shaheed may finish strong on the stretch. I think it's a pretty good trade for both sides. It could work out for both sides, but I think you're getting the best player in the trade, obviously. So yeah, I think you're cooking a little bit. It's a little bit of a light cook, but I like it. CD supposedly was suspended, or not suspended. He didn't play that first drive. Supposedly he was hanging out at the Red Rock Casino till like 7:30 a.m. and supposedly threw up. That's the report. Nothing has truly been confirmed. Who knows if we'll ever get the truth. Could have caught a touchdown at the end of the game there, the second touchdown. If Dak would have put it on him a little bit better, kind of threw a little hard outside, but CD could have caught that ball, stumbling around a little bit. Maybe if he didn't, hang out at the casino till 7:30 in Vegas, he would have caught it. Looking back at Dallas' schedule, it's not the best. Philly and Kansas City sucks, but after that, Detroit, Minnesota, Chargers, Washington is nice. So, yeah, I like it overall. You got CMC Brown and Hampton. Yeah, Hampton's schedule isn't great, but he should be back in a couple weeks. And, he'll be better than the rest of these running backs. But the schedule is rough for the Chargers. I did advise to try to sell your Chargers down the stretch. So maybe you can move Hampton for something. Maybe get another running back there. Zombie, appreciate the question. Appreciate all you guys tuning in tonight. Like, subscribe, share. Follow me on X at Fantasy Savvy. All right, a couple more teams here. About 10 minutes left in the show. Philly, Dallas, Chicago, Chargers, Vegas, Washington, Buffalo. Pretty nice schedule for Philly. So they may uptick a little bit here. Jalen Hurts, I'm going to hold. Saquon's schedule is beautiful. Buy if you can. A.J. Brown could be a buy. Devonta Smith could be a buy coming off that bad game against Detroit. And Dallas Goedert maybe get cheap too. Might not, I don't want to go, but yeah, I think you're buying Philly players on the stretch. I'm not selling here. I like this schedule. Dallas, Chicago, Chargers, Vegas, Washington, Buffalo. A lot of high scoring games there. I like it. Especially Saquon. Saquon is the ultimate buy, I think, down the stretch here. Pittsburgh, Chicago, Buffalo, Baltimore, Miami, Detroit, Cleveland. Pretty good for the most part. I mean, what can you really do here? Maybe you're selling Jalen Warren, though, with the way Kenny Gainwell. There's the 2 games where Kenny Gainwell has been featured now. He's been great. Now, Warren has been good, too. But Gainwell is really getting it going the pass game. Like you get him out in the he was a big receiving option at Memphis. Similar to Tony Pollard. and Antonio Gibson. So, Gainwell's look good. And we're probably expecting Rodgers back. So yeah, I think I would try to sell Jalen Warren. I'm Darnell Washington, I think, is going to get more playing time down the stretch here. Roman Wilson's the guy I'm going to keep an eye on. He played a lot more over Calvin Austin. He could be kind of a thing down the stretch, a guy you want to keep an eye on. DK is kind of DK. You can't really sell him. You don't really want to buy him. Pittsburgh defense down the stretch, forget about it. But Chris Boswell, great kicker. Definitely add him to your rosters if he's out there. San Francisco, Carolina, Cleveland. Cleveland's not great. Could be shitty weather. Brock Purdy did lose to PJ Walker a few years ago at Cleveland. So that could be a rough matchup. But Jim Schwartz definitely shut Purdy down. Then they get the bye, which sucks. But then you get Tennessee, Indiana, and Chicago. So home game, dome game, and then home against Chicago is nice. So, yeah, I mean, holding your San Francisco 49ers, I would still buy Ricky Pearsall. This is the time to buy. I think we'll have a strong finish. Brock Purdy, I think, will have a strong finish. Juwan Jennings, I think, will be steady. Kittle, holding. Hard to buy. CMC obviously is going to be impossible to buy. But yeah, San Francisco's schedule looks pretty good outside that Cleveland game, which could be tricky. Seattle at Tennessee, Minnesota at Atlanta, Indy at home, Rams at home, at Carolina. So rough game against the Rams last week. I would expect Darnold to play better at home, though. We could get some shitty weather games for Seattle down the stretch, but their schedule looks good. Kenny Walker is a guy that I'm buying now. Now, Kenny Walker played 43 snaps to Charbonnet's 36 last week. Over the last 3 weeks, he has 99 snaps to Charbonnet's 77. Kenny Walker is starting to get the goal line carries the last couple of weeks now. It's all turning. After Kenny Walker didn't get goal line carries, Charbonnet had 2. On his birthday, Kenny Walker didn't get goal line carries. Then the week after, Halani is scoring touchdowns. They're like, enough's enough. Time to turn it up for Kenny Walker. He's the best running back on the team by far. And this is a quote from McDonald. He says, I think you really felt Ken Sunday, and just even in the pass game too, on checkdowns, finding him late in the play just shows you that he's such an explosive player with the ball in his hands. No shit, Jim. I mean, Mike, I mean, we've known this for a long time. And I think he said weeks ago that they had a plan for their backfield. And I think the plan was this. Kenny Walker was hurt leading up to the season. Kenny Walker has had lots of injuries throughout his career. And I think they've really held him back early in the season to elevate him towards the end of the season. And I think that's what we're seeing now. So now is the time to buy Kenny Walker. Kenny Walker really may have a strong finish down the stretch here. I'm kind of buying it now. It could be fool's gold a little bit, but not Kenny Walker is not fool's gold. He's talented as hell. The one knock on him is make some boneheaded plays. He's not Charbonnet's probably the better pass protector. And he kind of always tries to bounce things outside, but you got to give him you got to give him a lot of looks in the game because he could just create that explosive play. He gives you those explosive plays. He's had a lot of big explosive plays called back this year. Shaheed is a guy I'm still interested in. I think he'll elevate a little bit more over Kupp as we get further down the line. So I'm buying Shaheed. Now you're not giving up a lot for him, but I think Shaheed will have some nice games on the stretch. AJ Barner, if you could sell him after that 770 game last week. Darnold, I know he had the rough game, but he'll bounce back. So I'm not selling Darnold, not panicking on Darnold. I think the schedule is pretty good. Again, Tennessee, Minnesota, Atlanta, Indy, the Rams, Carolina is pretty good. But Kenny Walker is the highlight there. I'm buying into Kenny Walker down the stretch. All right, Tampa Bay at Rams, Arizona, New Orleans, Atlanta, Carolina, Miami. Very, very nice schedule. We talked about Ibuka, buying into him. Godwin, if he's out there in your wire. Bucky Irving, if you could trade for him down the stretch, he could come back this week. Sean Tucker looked amazing last week. Bills let up a ton of rushing. Are we selling Sean Tucker? Are we buying? I'm kind of holding if you have him on your team, especially if you're a Bucky owner. You're just holding. Um, I do think when Bucky comes back, he'll be the guy again. But Tucker will get worked in, especially initially in Bucky's first game back. So you're just holding right now, but you could try to sell and see what you can get. I think, unless you're a Bucky owner, then I think you want to hold. But beautiful schedule all around. Ibuka, maybe buy off the last couple weeks. Baker too, you could buy as well. Tennessee, Seattle, Jacksonville, Cleveland, San Francisco. I mean, Tennessee's just so brutal. They're producing nothing for fantasy. Forget about Cam Ward, Tony Pollard, and Spear. Like, they're just nothing fantasy relevant there. You're not buying anything. You can't sell anything. So, yeah, nothing there. I know Gunnar Helm is starting to play about the same as Chigo Quanquo. And Cam Ward did have a big drive there down the stretch against Houston. So maybe, but Seattle's a tough matchup. Jacksonville's not great. Cleveland's not great. San Francisco, Kansas, their schedule's not even that good. So maybe Cam Ward plays better, but you're just not buying into it. One more team, then we'll get to your questions. Last couple of questions, then we'll get out of here, guys. It's going to be the Washington Commanders. We'll see if Jaden Daniels comes back down the stretch, but they have a bye this week. Then they get Denver, Minnesota, Giants, Philly, Dallas. So it's really Deebo Samuel. You're not really going to want to buy him. You're not really going to be able to sell him. Forget about this backfield. Chris Rodriguez and Bill and McNichols. It's just a hot mess. Zach Ertz. If Jaden Daniels is out there in your league, you could add him. He may come back. They're not going anywhere, but I think Daniels might be healthy enough where, again, it was on his non-throwing arm that they could want to bring him back down the stretch, just to get him some more reps. But Denver's not good coming back. Minnesota's not good. Giants is good, but Philly is not good, but Dallas. So, the Commanders is just like, there's not really much there. I guess if you could sell Deebo for something, but he might be decent on the stretch. You're probably not going to get a lot for him. So one more question from It's Juju 26. By the way, that's my daughter's nickname, Juliana. We call her Juju. So shout out to Juju 26 in the show. Love the name. I don't know who is that in your picture, but looks good to me. Guy high pointing the ball there. Is that Amara? Start Diggs or Devonta this week, full PPR. And again, it's Tuesday. We'll come back again. If you guys want to come back again Thursday, we'll answer again. But yeah, Diggs really coming on. Plays Cincinnati this week. But Devonta gets Dallas. So this is a tough one. I think it's pretty damn close, but I'm going to go with Diggs here against the Bengals. I think the Bengals defense is definitely worse than Dallas's. We could see a lot of Saquon here also. So I think they're both really good. I mean, why can't you get both of these guys in your lineup? I mean, you don't want to bench either one of these guys, but I think I'd give Diggs the slight edge against the Bengals. But try to get both in your lineup if you can. But two great options. Both should have very good games. That's it. Appreciate it, everybody. Please like, subscribe, share. Follow me on X at Fantasy Savvy. That will be it for tonight. This was a great show. You guys gave us a lot of great questions. I appreciate everybody joining me tonight. We'll be back Thursday for a full matchup review of every single game, every single fantasy relevant player. Back Monday for a recap. We'll talk about the Thanksgiving games probably on Monday as well. Maybe I'll try to do one more show before Thanksgiving starts on Thursday. Yeah, we'll be here for the rest of the year. So appreciate everybody tonight. Take care. All the best. And we'll see you next time. Like, subscribe, and share. Fantasy Savvy on X. Have a great rest of the week.